Hello and welcome to the podcast You're Better Than That with me, Hannah Miller, and friends. Welcome back, Zoe.
Hello, Hannah.
So we are fast approaching Easter. How exciting.
Oh, my favourite. I love Easter.
I love Easter as well. Underrated.
Yeah. It doesn't have as great a PR.
No,
you know?
It should be. I mean, apart from the fact that Easter eggs are sold from about the 2nd of Jan, which I find a bit overwhelming.
Yeah.
But no, I think Easter is underrated, brilliant. You get Good Friday, Bank Holiday Monday, you get the break, you get the time, you get the
joy
chocolate,
of the Sunday,
the joy of the Sunday, all of that.
Easter lamb. My mum does Easter lamb.
Oh, that's lovely. Sorry to any non-lamb eaters, vegetarians and so on. But no, it's good. Favourite Easter egg?
Oh, it has to be Dime or Maltesers.
Good choices.
What about you?
I love minstrels. I love Tony's Chocolonely, which you've never eaten.
Never, ever.
And
I've seen it around, but just
no, you need to.
Okay.
It's so good, guys. If you're listening to this and you've not eaten Tony's, it's worth the extra pennies.
Okay,
it's really good.
Noted.
Really good chocolate. I like just the normal milk chocolate version. They do with the fancy ones, but give that a go. I'll buy some. So we're thinking about Easter actually, and I was thinking about Easter Saturday. So whether somebody's listening to this with faith or not doesn't matter. We all know that Easter Saturday comes between Good Friday and Easter Sunday. And Good Friday was a very, very tragically sad day in the story of Jesus, as it's the day that he's crucified. And Easter Sunday is the day of his resurrection. But we want to focus this podcast on what happens on Easter Saturday, which is the comma, the in-between. There's nothing really recorded about the day. But what we do know is they were absolutely disappointed with people. I mean, that is essentially what's going on. So we've kind of put today's topic in the kind of the couching of Easter Saturday, and the idea that there are times in life where stuff goes wrong, and oftentimes we are disappointed by people. So there's loads of types of disappointment, but this particular conversation is around when other people disappoint us. And I've got to be honest, like, this is a big deal for me, my personality. I am easily disappointed in people. I find myself at times carrying quite a lot of emotion or thought energy around how people haven't met my expectations and disappointed me. I see in some of my children that they've picked up this trait, and it means they can be easily hurt because people don't meet their expectations. And I know for me, it's something that I've absolutely got to address and have been trying to address, because it can be really, really hurtful. You know, we're ranging from just patterns of behaviour that are just irritating and disappointing to systematic things people have chosen to do that have really disappointed me in their behaviour. So we're not just talking about the big deals of life, but the smaller things of life. I don't know what you think about this. How do you find, what sort of things can you think of around disappointment with people?
Yeah, I was just going to reflect on what you were saying, because I've never experienced that from you. So it's really interesting.
Really?
Maybe it's because you're self-aware.
You don't disappoint me.
Well, what can I say? No.
I think I know it of myself, so I probably filter it and think about it, because I definitely see this as a trait.
Sure.
For me, it comes from rejection sensitivity.
Sure. Okay.
So I think I'm quite sensitive to rejection, and if somebody behaves in a way that hasn't met my expectations, I can just view that as a rejection of me. That's how I see it.
Okay. I kind of on the other side of the scale, I don't trust people easily, so I don't think I get disappointed easily, because I don't give trust as easily as I think you trust people very easily.
Yeah, that's my biggest strength
and
weakness.
And so I think that's where I sit, where I'm like, well, if I don't trust you, I'm not going to be disappointed.
No, that's a really good point.
But there's pros and cons.
So
to
I guess if somebody does disappoint you, it's a really big deal, because they've been let into the trust circle.
Absolutely, yes.
And for me, I could be disappointed by more flippant things. If it's going to happen for you, they're in that trust circle. You've extended trust to them,
it hurts.
and then it hurts big time.
Yeah, that's where I sit.
Well, the thing is, everyone listening is going to have been disappointed by other people. You know, we do disappoint ourselves sometimes, and we can talk about that another day. But today is about being disappointed by other people. And I just thought I'd talk through a few things that I think we need to do, because I have thought about this quite a lot. I think, first of all, we've got to acknowledge our feelings.
Yeah.
If you have felt disappointed, it is not good practice to just skim it over and pretend it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
I'm not necessarily saying you should acknowledge your feelings with that person. That's a separate point we can come on to in a minute. But I think you have got to recognise, ouch, that hurt. That wasn't what I expected from you. Your behaviour let me down. You didn't meet my expectations. And acknowledge that, as uncomfortable as it might be, something hasn't been good. And I think nothing comes from burying our feelings.
Yeah. Could you give an example, maybe? I mean, you be careful with how you share it, but like of when someone has disappointed you, just so it's...
Would you like my list?
But really practically how you managed to...
Yeah, some of the things that disappoint me are... Well, there's one very clear thing that I've realised is, as you know, as people know listening to this, I often talk about strengths. And so if somebody... if I have an expectation that somebody will reciprocate my strength. So, for example, I do quite a lot of communication. I am often the comms member of both families that I'm a part of.
The comms team.
Comms queen. And sometimes when that just meets a deafening, resounding lack of response, that's really disappointing to me, because generally, I'm not saying I never mess up, but generally I'm quite good at getting back. So when I hit this sort of no answer, I can find that quite disappointing.
Sure. And it's because it's such a high value for
exactly
you.
That.
So then when it's not reciprocated, it hurts even more.
Exactly. And everyone will have their own versions of that, like things that they are good at that then you expect to see reciprocated from other humans, because we think it's human nature to do it, when actually there was no ill intent. They just weren't very good at it.
Yeah.
Another thing that disappoints me is when I feel I haven't been in people's thoughts in the way they've maybe been in mine. So I try to be thoughtful about gifts, for example. And so if I'm not really interested in monetary value for gifts, and I'm not just saying that to sound pious. Don't get me wrong, Sam, if you're listening, diamond earrings. Actually, he will never buy me diamond earrings because I lose everything. So they will never be a gift.
Smart man.
But, other things, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying I don't like those. But actually, if someone remembers something that I like Sam's mum buys me this like marzipan chocolate that she remembered I once said. I'm like, oh. And when somebody buys me something that I really don't like, it shows and in my mind, I might read that as, you just don't even know me, and I feel a bit disappointed that you haven't bothered to show the interest in me. So those are quite flippant things. There's bigger deals which are more, you're not, putting the effort into this relationship that I am, this friendship, this family relationship. I do the running. That's a classic. Some will hear me say, I'm the one who does the running. I'm the one who does the organising. Yeah. That's probably not totally true, but I can see it that way.
Yeah.
And then you've got like business relationships where somebody has lied to you or not done what they said they were going to do. So I think I have high expectations of myself and high expectations of other people, which means I'm really regularly disappointed with them.
How does that affect you, like on a daily basis?
I think the best thing has been realising in the last few years that this is a big deal for me, and therefore I adjust my expectations, which is going to be one of my next points, is about adjusting expectations, because I actually wrote down on my notes, did I communicate my expectations?
Yeah, that's true.
So my sister has said to me loads of times, you've got to lower your expectations of people. And I've always thought, that is such a cynical way to look at life. I'm not going to lower my expectations of people. But to a level, she's right. She's right that when you have this kind of expectation that people are going to do X, Y, Z, and they're not going to, and they're not capable of it, who ends up being affected? Me, nobody else. And so recognizing my expectations are not going to be met is really helpful, along with recognizing I might be holding people to an expectation that I've never communicated and they have no right or obligation to meet.
Yeah.
I remember in the period after Sam's dad died, there was a load of change during that period. And there was a couple of people who I felt, looking back, I'd probably felt quite hurt by that they weren't more present. And I now look back and realise that grief was probably clouding the way I was seeing the whole thing. And it wasn't fair on them that I was holding them to that. But then there have probably been other times where actually people just haven't met my expectation. But I'm not sure I ever told them that I had that expectation of them. You know, if my mum says to me, for example, Hannah, I'd like you to call me every day, that can be an expectation she has. But I can also say, I'm really sorry I can't meet that expectation, but I can call you every week.
Yeah.
Just because somebody has that expectation doesn't mean we have to meet it. But if we never say what it is, we're in this woolly grey area of, you don't care about me enough, when actually they had no idea that was the expectation we had.
Yeah.
I can expect people to be a mind reader sometimes. I had a friend who said to me years ago, she said, I really hate it when you're late. And she told me.
Yeah.
And that didn't mean I was never late, but it meant that I tried harder and I texted when I was. Because I thought this really matters to her. I'm not always going to meet her expectation. But now I know she has this as a priority, which I'm not really hung up about people being late unless they're like really, really late. You know, 10 minutes is not going to bother me in the way it bothered her. And so I think communicating expectations just sorts it all out, because people have the right to not meet it. You know, you have the right to say, Hannah, I can't do that. You know, it's not something in our friendship I've got the bandwidth for. And I can then go, okay, and just deal with the fact that I got disappointed by that.
Yeah.
I think that's really like probably the gold from this conversation is, have I communicated this expectation? And now I know they're not going to meet it. I've now just got to let them off the hook because they don't have an obligation to meet it.
And once you then do communicate, if they don't meet that expectation, then there's a conversation that you can have. But
totally.
It's fair on them because you've said something.
Now, there's another type of way someone doesn't meet my expectations, and that could be when their behaviour was just poor, like not just an unmet expectation about, you know, you didn't text me back or you didn't spend enough time with me or whatever it might be. Sometimes people just behave badly. And then the question that you need to ask yourself then is, should I speak up? And I've been having this conversation with my middle son, who's been quite disappointed by somebody, and should he speak to this person about it or not? And I think there's a couple of things to ask yourself is, what is your motivation in talking to them about it? Is it to sort things out, or is it to fall out or to be justified in your pain? And if it can just be to bring clarity with no expectation that they're going to apologise, then it might be a good idea. If you think that you want to talk about it because you deserve an apology, you might not get one, and then nothing changes. There are certain people in my life that if I spoke up every time they disappointed me, it would be futile because they don't have the maturity to understand. And, you know, there could be some advice out there to say, well, you need to cut people like that out of your life. But you can't always.
And sometimes people that disappoint us could be family.
Exactly.
And you don't have that choice to cut people out.
Exactly. So it's kind of then comes back to, how do I readjust my expectations of what this relationship is going to look like? That has been hugely beneficial to me in terms of dealing with how that relationship is going to pan out. You know, really important relationships, like the people that we're married to, the people that we kind of really work closely with, expectations need to be clear. And then we can work out, are they realistic? Are they unrealistic? Have I communicated them? Am I holding people to being mind readers of my weird nuances that they had no idea? Like, you know, there's so many funny memes out there at the moment where it's these two cats having a conversation. They're often about unclear expectations, like the husband saying, do you want food? And she says no, the other cat says no, so the husband goes off and buys food and doesn't come back with food, and she's then cross, don't you love me, you didn't buy me food,
you didn't think of me.
As much as it's silly and funny, we spend our lives doing those kind of behaviours where people let us down when they literally did what we asked them to do or didn't do, or we expected them to know that no meant yes, please bring me food home. So we've got to grow up a bit and think, actually, where am I responsible for this kind of disappointment? I then think we need to, in a really cheesy way, think about what we can learn from it. And that doesn't mean I'm going to learn never to trust anyone and close down and never think anyone's got any, time for me. That's not what I mean. But every situation where there's been a mismatch of expectations or disappointment, we can think, how could that be different next time? Maybe I do need to readjust my expectations. Maybe I need to be clearer. Maybe I need to be a bit more resilient next time. Maybe it wasn't as personal as I thought it was, which is what I'm learning over and over and over again.
Wow.
And I think then it might be that we need to revise our expectations. There's a social psychology thing called hindsight bias, where even difficult things that have happened to us in the past, if we change retrospectively the expectation we had, we can look back on that situation a bit more favourably. And then going forward, obviously, a revised expectation means that things are going to work out better. But we have a little bit of control here to kind of rewrite the way it feels by expecting a different thing from them. I think sometimes we can be quite cross with our parents as teenagers. I'm using this as an example where I now have more understanding of what my parents were juggling and trying to do and be, which means I can use hindsight bias to look back and reframe some things that were disappointing for me. That means that I can live a bit more comfortably with things that didn't look how I thought they were going to.
That's good.
And I think the last thing is to think about future boundaries and what's in your control. How can I go back into these relationships, future relationships, work colleagues? How can I set it up better for the future? And where do I put some boundary in? If someone continues to not meet my expectations and it should be reciprocal, something's got to change. And where am I being realistic and unrealistic? And sometimes a conversation with a friend can be really helpful there. I had a dog walk with one of my friends recently where we were talking about a family dynamic. And actually, me being third person in that gave her a different perspective on the way she was seeing those expectations. And she does that for me over and over again. It's that annoying thing when someone says, well, maybe that's not what they meant. And you're like, I don't want to hear that. I just want to be cross. But actually, and maybe you're seeing this in a different way, and somebody being able to see that with you can be really, really good for future times. And I guess to kind of round up this conversation, unless there's anything else you want to say, people are going to disappoint us. The best people in the world will disappoint us. Only perfect people don't disappoint us. And I think there's only been one perfect human on earth. And that's not me. Me and you are going to disappoint each other. We are going to disappoint the people around us. And I think in that, it's about understanding there's a difference between intentional and unintentional behaviours. And how can we have a bit more grace for the unintentional disappointment and communicate better? And how do we deal like grown-ups with intentional disappointment that needs to kind of stop, change, and have a different direction? So I don't want anyone who's listening to this, I don't want them to hear that I'm saying really poor system, patterns of behaviour are okay. I'm talking more about being clear with expectations, clear with communication, and deciding intention around it so that we can be much more careful with how much maybe space we let these things give in our head. That has been so freeing for me and enables me to actually have much healthier relationships with people because my expectations have been adjusted.